Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Jo Goddard. I'm excited to welcome you. Hello, Lucy. I see people coming into the room. So please pop a little message in the chat, your name, where you're calling from, where you're here from. It's a little bit of a different technology. So yeah, glad you all found us. We moved over to Webinar Jam, so I'm glad you're here. I'm just going to give people a few minutes to come on. So if you, again, just type into the chat where you're here from, and I'm going to go over to Zoom and just make sure there's nobody lonely waiting for us there. And just to remind people that we've moved over here. So we're going to get started in just a moment. Please say hello on the chat. See if anyone is here. We've been having so much fun with this week. So it's been really good. Okay, good. No one's there. So I'm gonna close out of that and save all my bandwidth. All right, so I see people coming in. So we've got Linda from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We've got Amanda from Orlando, Florida. Nora from California. Is that Nora who I know? Yay. Zoe from London. Hey, Zoe. Lucy, also from London. Great. I love that we have people from across the world. This is the beauty of modern technology. We've got Paula from Israel. Oh, I love it. Yay. Yay, Nora. Awesome. Tama from Oregon. Great. I see lots of people coming on. Please say hello, say where you're from. I love seeing, we had someone from like Venezuela on the other day. We've had a lot of folks from London. I seem to have some folks who know about me in London. That's awesome. Certainly we get people from all over the US. We get a lot of Canadians and sometimes some Aussies, and I love when we get people from non-English speaking countries. That's really exciting too. So Laura from North Carolina, welcome everybody. So really excited to jump in. There's a lot that I want to talk about today, and I've talked about different things, each time I've done this week. And so some people have come back more than once because there's just a lot of questions. There's just a lot of things people want to know. And so I'm going to do my best. And so I went through the questions that have been sent in. There's several questions that I wrote to you about today in the updated email with the updated link that I'm going to talk about today. And certainly I will do my very best to also prioritize the people who are on live and the questions that you have. That is why we're here. So yay. Hi, Gina. Where are you calling from? Oh my gosh, we have someone from Nigeria. That is amazing. Welcome from Nigeria. We have Tammy from Brooklyn. Yay, Brooklyn's in my heart. I heart Brooklyn. I will always heart Brooklyn. I lived there for a long time. So really wonderful to see you all. So I know that your time is super valuable and you can spend it in lots of different ways. So it is not lost on me that you chose to spend some time with me today to learn. And so I want to give you as much as I possibly can in our time together. So I'm going to jump in. We're going to use the chat today. So please do use it. Please feel free to comment about the things that I'm talking about or to each other. I love when there's interaction and people are talking with each other and supporting each other. So that's a wonderful thing. That's part of what is really beautiful about these gatherings, these online gatherings that we have in my tribe. And I'm going to ask you some questions and things too. And then, like I said, I'm going to really reserve a lot of time to answer your questions today. And I am going to tell you about some work that I'm doing around orgasm and pleasure with people, because that might be really good work for some of you. I know it will be, actually. So I am going to also save some time for that. So I'm going to jump right in. So for people who are new to my work, I do a lot of teaching. I've been doing this work for over 20 years, almost 25 years now. I can hardly believe I can say that about anything. You know, um, it's it's really been an amazing journey because I've worked with so many people over those years, and I've learned so much from every single one of them. And and I've taught in just about every imaginable context and age group you can imagine, literally from like pre-K all the way up to adults. My focus now is adults. My focus is women. And so I'm going to give a lot of examples today about women. And that's because that is the focus of my work. And the things I'm going to talk about today will be useful for everyone. So people of all genders are welcome. And we're going to go for 90 minutes. So there's a lot to talk about in this topic. And so we're really going to use our time today. So you will get more out of this if you are less distracted. So I do want to encourage you to turn off any programs that are running, turn off the Facebook, and really, like, you chose to be here today. So why not just really be here, be really present and take it in. I know that when I try to do multiple things, I'm not taking either thing in to its maximum. And I promise you will get some really, really useful things today. So, and of course that's an issue that I hear from people all the time around sex, like they're having trouble being present in sex. So let's practice that presence today, because of course the way we do other parts of our life is also the way we're doing sex. That's how that works. So really happy that you're here. I want to start by saying that, I went through, I assume people are here because you want to learn more about pleasure and orgasm. You want to have better orgasms, or you want to have them at all. Some people don't know how to have them, or they don't know if they're having them. And I've gotten quite a few questions about that this week. And so I'll talk a little bit about that today. And I can say that, I went through a long period of time in my early sexual life where I absolutely couldn't have an orgasm, didn't know how to do it, didn't understand my body. I started having sex at a fairly young age. And then I had a boyfriend in my like mid-teen years, like in high school into college, who really tried really, really hard. Like we both did, and we had this beautiful relationship, this beautiful love. He taught me so much about how to love. And I enjoyed sex with him because I loved him, and I was getting to experience something new in my body. And I was very frustrated that I couldn't figure out how to have an orgasm. And here he was having an orgasm every time we had sex. And I was like, man, like, why is this not happening for me? And he really tried hard. He really was very earnest and made every effort. And the fact of the matter was that I didn't understand my own body. I didn't know my own body. I didn't know how to have an orgasm. And so there was no way he was really going to be able to help me do that. It was what it was for a long time. And we made many, many different kinds of efforts. I would come close, or I would feel like, oh, like if I could just get over that hump or whatever, So again, it's not that I was like not enjoying sex, and I just knew there was so much more that I could be enjoying that wasn't happening. So that was my early journey. And it really wasn't until I went to college and I had really amazing sex educators who inspired me to come do this work. Who encouraged me and gave me a lot of permission to really explore my body and figure out what I wanted and figure out what worked for me, that I finally had an orgasm. I had an orgasm first by myself, and then I had one with a partner, and I was just like ecstatic because I'd been trying for so long and it hadn't happened. So, I really felt like at that point, like I cracked the code on something very significant and important. And cracking that code was a big deal. And it didn't just impact my sexual life. It impacted every other part of my life. It impacted my confidence. It impacted the way I spoke up for myself. It really impacted me in the ways that I was showing up. And And so that is what I've also seen with many of the clients that I've worked with. It's like when they crack that code, when they figure that piece out, it really makes a big difference for them. Not just sexually and in their relationship, but in all parts of their life. And so sex is important and pleasure is important. And, I think the other thing that I want to say that I've been talking about this week is that a lot of times we might feel like, I shouldn't be, the world is crazy. Crazy things are happening. I shouldn't make this important. People are dying, children are being taken from their parents, crazy things are happening, and that's happening all the time. And I would pledge to you that if we don't take care of ourselves, we are not good. We're not able to actually take care of the other people in our lives and actually be citizens that can make a real difference. And, during the Sex, Power, and Leadership conference that some of you might have attended, we talked about that in some of the talks. One of the talks with Charlene Carruthers, we talked about how leaders are oftentimes reproducing the trauma that they've experienced in their leadership, right? And so even, like people that are doing activist work or that are really doing like social justice work or doing work to really try to improve our world, often are unconsciously, because there's so much trauma that they've experienced that brought them to doing that work, they're repeating it, they're reproducing it. And we don't want to do that. And so when we do the work on ourselves to heal ourselves, to really have more joy and more play and more pleasure and more fun, which is, I am working on that myself right now. It's like talking about sex is, it's like fun to a degree. It's like not your everyday job, and it's still work, and so there's ways in which, I think when we love our work, as many of us do, we also can blur the lines between play and fun and work. And at the end of the day, like, we need downtime. Our brains need downtime. We need quiet, and we need time to replenish. And so sex and orgasm and pleasure and play are ways we do that. Those are some of the ways we do that. Nature. So I know firsthand that the shame that can be there when we haven't figured our bodies out. I also know the exhaustion that can be there when we're not taking care of ourselves and we're working too hard, or we're too focused on like the causes that we're trying to impact in the world, and we're not really taking care of this. I've watched many spiritual leaders do that. And it's really detrimental. It's detrimental not just to you, but to those who are in your community, or in your family. And I think we really, really have to get that. Pleasure is important. We were given a human body to fully experience what it is to be human. And we were given these abilities to feel really good, to, enjoy delicious food, to enjoy a beautiful sunset, to feel that, we've had these breezes in Los Angeles lately that I've just been like, oh my God. I just stop when like one of those breezes happens, and I feel it over my skin and appreciate that moment. And there's so many of those moments that we just let fly by. We don't appreciate, we don't take the time for. And so I think we're meant to have that. We're meant to experience that, or we wouldn't be in our human bodies, and we wouldn't have the ability to experience pleasure the way that we do. And so if you're not experiencing the pleasure you want to experience, then the good news is there's ways to develop that and work on that and have new experiences. And so I want to talk about that today. So learning to orgasm changed something in me really significantly, and in my agency over my body that I had not had before, in my confidence. And I want that for everyone that I work with. And I've seen that in many, many women. And you are no different, regardless of gender. Also, this is for people, again, of every gender. You are all welcome here. So there's several things that really get in the way. And, I want to start by talking about this, and I'm going to get into some of your questions because there's a lot of questions to answer today. There are several issues that really get in the way. Oh, yay. So Paul is here from Seattle. Eleanor is here from Wales. Gina from North Hollywood. Yay. Good. So, yeah. So, feel free to pop into the chat as I talk about these things, which things resonate for you and what you feel like has been most in the way for you. That will help me address the things that you need today, because this is a huge topic and I can't possibly address everything in our 90 minutes, but I'm going to address as much as I can. So the absolute number one thing, and I start with it because it is the biggest. And again, I've experienced this myself. I know this is, I think it's a practice to get better at it. But I think really orgasm issue number one that the majority of people have is the inability to receive. And I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, what? I totally can receive. If someone gives me a gift, I accept it. Like I totally am open to pleasure. But when we really, really start to look at this one and we really start to get underneath it, there's a lot of ways in which we're impeding our ability to receive and our presence to receive, right? It requires presence too. It's sort of mind-boggling how many of us cannot receive sexually. There's so many things that get in the way. There's so many things. I mean, I encounter people all the time who can't receive, because we're socialized to care for everybody else. Women are definitely socialized that way. We're socialized to take care of everybody else's needs before our own. And so, yeah, receiving doesn't always work the way that, we would like it to, when we're used to sitting down to eat dinner last. And, we're used to always being the one that shows up, but then other people aren't showing up for us in the same way. I mean, that's going to create an issue with receiving. We all have those women in our families, and we may have taken on those patterns ourselves. And some women will spend their entire lives this way. And I think it's important to say that many men, people of different genders will do this, and there's different come-froms, I think that, we're socialized in a particular way as women to do that. But I think also like men being the provider and always like providing and putting their needs to the side, that also happens for people. Sexually, I think men get a lot more permission to really receive and like to get theirs, right, than women do. So I think it's really common that men are going to have their orgasm, they're going to feel satisfied, and that sex is going to end after their satisfaction is complete. I've heard a billion stories about that. I mean, that's so common, that, women who partner with men are very frustrated that it's like, why is sex over? Like, I'm not done. I didn't get what I needed. So those scales are still really uneven. And I think we have to really question these approaches to sex. We have to be able to break through them and shift the paradigms around this, that sex ends when a man is done. And so I think another reason that we don't receive is that to really receive, to really have an orgasm is vulnerable, right? If we want to let go, like to go into our wildness, like really, truly let go in our wildness, and to have the biggest possible orgasms and pleasure, that is vulnerable. We're letting somebody see a part of us that most people don't see. And so if we have a fear of vulnerability, as most human beings do, and which is not an unfounded fear, it's going to be very hard to receive. And so there are situations that like, yeah, it's not safe to be vulnerable with this person. It's not safe to share myself with this person the way I would like to be able to. So we have to look out for those. And that's important that we're looking out for ourselves. And if we have a partner that we're like, man, I really want to be able to let go with this person. I love this person, or I'm really into this person, or, whatever, even if it's like someone we just met that we're having a one night stand with, we might just be like, yeah, I want to really be able to let go with abandon. If we're in that place, then we've got to be able to allow ourselves that vulnerability. And that's very uncomfortable. It's very, very uncomfortable, right? And then there's all these reasons around, like all the shame, all the things that are in your head about what you're supposed to be doing or not doing, or if you grew up with like a religious upbringing and you've got some of that stuff. People ask some questions about that this week too. So it's like, what do we do with that? How do we get that out of the way so we can really receive the pleasure? If you're sitting there thinking like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, you're not receiving. right? You're not. And so sometimes it is that the bigger work that has to happen there. We have to believe that we deserve the pleasure of good things, and we all deserve to have pleasure. This world is a mad world. It is like, there's a lot of pain in this world. And the only way we really heal that pain is that we have pleasure. Pleasure is the antidote to pain. Growth is the antidote to pain because it gives us new perspectives. And so all of that is a part of this, right? When we have that sexual growth and that deeper sexual knowing about ourselves, and when we allow ourselves to really feel pleasure and to drop into pleasure in a very different way than maybe we ever have, that changes something, that shifts something, and that allows us to break through some of the pain that is in maybe our histories maybe if we've been experienced trauma. It allows us to also like create something that is an antidote in the world to the pain that is in the world. That's important. That's important. Don't denigrate that. Don't minimize that, right? Yay. So Pat says, thanks for this positive reinforcement. Lucy Devi says, yes, I'm definitely frustrated that sex ends when my husband has orgasmed, but I feel lost as what else to do. I have lots of answers for what else to do. You've got to change that conversation, but we'll get there. So let's come back to that. I want to talk with you about a few more of these things that really get in the way. So do pop into the chat. What are the common struggles that you have? I think all the time I hear from people like, I don't know how to let go. I don't know how to be present. And I also hear a lot of like, I can't take up too much space. And, again, I think this comes more from women because there's this idea that we're supposed to like be quiet, be docile, be submissive, depending on what culture we've been brought up in or what our approach, has been in relationships or how we've been treated in relationships. There's a lot of reasons why we might not feel that agency to really take up more space. And so many people, many women especially, are going to prevent themselves from experiencing pleasure because they're afraid of taking up space. I hear a lot, I did a webinar some years ago called You're Taking Too Long, right? Because I hear that refrain all the time, like, oh, I'm afraid to take too long. It feels like it takes a long time. I don't want to wear my partner out. It's like we take longer sometimes. Sometimes we're a slower burn in terms of our pleasure and our orgasms. And sometimes that build takes longer for us. Let yourself have that space. Let yourself have what you need, And also, if you stop comparing yourself to your partner or to other women or to men or to whoever or to the media depictions of what sex and orgasm look like, maybe you could give yourself a little more generosity about how yours looks, that it doesn't need to look like other people's. And, I think that many women are really afraid of being seen as greedy or selfish. And so then they'll hold themselves back. And so what if you, again, really divorce that idea of greedy and selfish from your sexuality? Because really, actually, sexuality is meant to be expansive. It is meant to be big. It is meant, that's why we have orgasms. That's why we can use sex to reproduce actual human beings. I mean, what's more expansive than that? That's pretty damn expansive and creative. And so your sexual energy is your creative energy. And when you talk about it as if it's something that makes you greedy or selfish or that you're supposed to keep a lid on or keep small, you're just diminishing your power. And you're diminishing your ability to have more. And I want more for you. I want more for you. Take up more space, have your multiple orgasms if you want them. Let your beautiful life force come forward. Why are we here if not for that? If your partner can't handle it, then the question is, why can't your partner handle it? And that's something that I hear from people. And someone asked the other day, it's like, oh, I'm afraid of how my partner is going to judge me. I hear that all the time from people. I'm really afraid of how I'll be judged, what my partner will think of me. that's the conversation then that has to happen. And if you don't know how to have that conversation, then you've got to learn how to have that conversation, because you're not going to break through until you get to the bottom of that. And that's just real talk. Okay. So for people who are partnered and you're in those dynamics are really, really hard. I'm not minimizing that at all. And the only way out is through, right? Otherwise you spend years and years and years in an unsatisfying relationship, not getting your needs met, sad, frustrated. I have plenty of clients that come to me in that place, right? Thankfully, they're coming to me and we can work on it, but there are plenty of people that never do. They'll never get any help. They will go to their grave feeling that way. They will, or their partner, they'll go to their partner's death or their own death feeling that way, because they never addressed it. I think it's exciting actually to get underneath that stuff, because there's so much to uncover about yourself and about the love and the relationship and what you're there to teach each other. All right. Third issue is that orgasm issue is that you don't know how. I've had several questions about this week. I don't know if I've had an orgasm. I'm not sure how it's supposed to feel. It seems like, is it energetic? Am I supposed to ejaculate? I got that question the other day. So sometimes women ejaculate, sometimes they don't. The truth is, and most people don't realize this, is that even for men, orgasm and ejaculation are two different things. It's not the same thing, but we collapse it and we think it's the same thing. It often happens at the same time for men, unless they have really trained themselves in like Taoist practices or tantric practices where they learn to have an orgasm without the ejaculation and like to save their energy, right? It's an ancient practice, and there are many men who work on that, and that allows them to control their erections more in sex and show up a little bit differently as partners, as well as maintaining their energy in a different way. So the same for women, the same for people with vulvas. You do not necessarily have to ejaculate. Sometimes people do. Sometimes it's energetic. Sometimes it's, there are definitely physical mechanisms that happen in orgasm. But I think that this is one of the biggest, most undeniable reasons that orgasm feels elusive to women is that they don't understand their own anatomy and how it works and what gets them off. And so if you don't know what turns you on and gets you off, then you're not going to be able to ask for it, because you don't know what you're asking for, right? And so that there's a domino effect that happens there. I was in a relationship where when I couldn't orgasm, where I could talk about it and we worked on it. And then I was in another relationship after that where we did the same. And we worked on it together, and like there was a lot of healthy communication. And so sometimes that's not happening. But again, I could only go so far in that because I didn't know what to tell my partner to do. So we lack real information in our culture about body and orgasm. Most of us do not really learn about that. Even if you got any good sex ed, they probably didn't talk a lot about pleasure. That's just the way that works. So it can be a bit complicated. And I think particularly with vulvas and female body parts, it can be a little complicated. Things are hidden, and we also don't learn as much about it. There's not as much openness about our bodies in our culture. And so, like for instance, we get erections. We also get erections. We have all this juicy erectile tissue, and we can't necessarily see it in our erections. They show up very differently. However, if we learn to work with that, we can have much greater orgasms and much more pleasure, right? So it's like having more of that information and understanding that most women don't come from intercourse alone. And I get this all the time. People are like, I want to learn how to have an orgasm through intercourse. I mean, there are ways to work on that it's not like a horrible thing to want. And just know that the majority of us don't. The majority of us don't. So there's nothing wrong with you. But there are a lot of things that you could learn to develop and things you could shift that would help you. And so that is also important to know. So there's just all of this ignorance, and then we've got like Freud, we're still recovering from the damage he did, because he taught us that clitoral orgasms are for masturbating little girls and vaginal orgasms are mature orgasms, and that's been very hurtful to people. And we are still trying to recover from that myth. If you're having orgasms, wonderful. There's nothing immature about any kind of orgasm that you're having. They just might feel different. You'll notice sometimes that orgasms are different. So I see a few comments on the chat. Nora says, I was apprehensive of talking to my new partner about sex and how it ended when he was done. And when we did talk about it, he thanked me for opening the lines of communication and we were able to hash it all out. And the sex is so much better now. That combo is so important. Congratulations, Nora. That's awesome to hear. Good for you. I'm so glad that you were able to have that conversation. And a lot of people are really afraid to have that conversation. It's like, oh, it's just going to ruin everything. It's like, if your partner doesn't care about your pleasure and making sure that you also, experience what you want to experience and that you get your needs met, that's a problem, and so that's then the conversation that will have to happen. But we are hugely avoidant. And so most people will avoid that conversation. Paul says, I think men need to experience joy, pleasure first, extending the beauty of shared sexual energy before he comes, that would then allow her to orgasm. Yeah, I think that can be very beneficial for someone that's used to just being the one that comes and like kind of driving what happens sexually and what the order of events are. I think that it's very important to mix it up. And I think, having that shared sexual energy, which is a vulnerability also, which is something more men need to experience, I think is incredibly important. Absolutely. Lucy says, sometimes it takes me 40 minutes to orgasm, and I do judge myself that is too long. You're not taking too long. It's not too long. That's true for a lot of people. And, I think when we've gotten in the fast food approach to orgasm, where it's like, vibrator, and like you can have an orgasm in like 2 minutes, we actually are training our brains to not allow us to have more extended pleasure. And so while sometimes we might want to have the quickie, and there's nothing wrong with the quickie, we don't want to be doing that all the time. And I think it's actually good that you take time with your body and time to rev things up. Our bodies need that, and I think a big reason why a lot of women don't enjoy sex with their partners or intercourse in particular, sometimes with their male partners, is that there's not enough time being spent to juice up all of that erectile tissue and all of the spongy tissue and all of the things going on in the body. And so then the body actually isn't really ready for that penetration or for more of the intensity that comes maybe too fast. So I think that's a big block, actually. And it's something that there's a lot of people that need to work on. So the fact that you're taking longer is good. And I hope you can stop judging yourself as much about it. Lara says, do women get a form of blue balls? My partner complains of the pain and discomfort when he can't act on his arousal. If we are out, I also feel a lot of discomfort and soreness when I can't. Yeah, I used to joke. I once wrote a poem called Blue Clit. I used to joke about that a little bit. But yeah, I think that sometimes we feel that aching. I think the key here is that it's not anybody else's job to take care of that for you. And I think a lot of times what happens with men, it's like, oh my God, baby, I've got blue balls. You've got to fix this for me. And it's like, it's nobody's job to fix that for you. That's your job to figure that out, what you need to do. But yeah, I do think that is possible. Mary says, I like Betty Dodson's approach to orgasm, clitoral stimulation plus vaginal penetration. It really works. And now I experience more wonderful feelings, and it easily can be added to partner sex. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things too, Mary. And you may know Betty Dodson is one of my dear friends and mentors. So yeah, but that's a combination that a lot of, it's not her approach. It's like a lot of people like that, and so I think it's like letting yourself have more than one thing and figuring out the ways that can work for you sexually to have the more than one thing that you want, to stimulate more of the parts. And again, when you understand your sexual body more, then you're able to work with those parts better, or your partner's body. So orgasm issue number 4 are that we have false sexual bars. We have these false ideas about sexuality, these false expectations of what we think it's supposed to look like, what we think it's supposed to be, how our partner is supposed to be, that, our partner should meet our needs, that, whatever. And, that we should be having, mutual orgasms at the same exact moment, that you should be having them in a particular way or through intercourse or whatever. There's all these expectations we hold ourselves to. And if you're in your expectation, then you're in your judgment of yourself, which means you're not in your presence of your body and you're not going to experience the pleasure you want to experience. Do you follow that? Right? So we have often bought into ideas that are not true. We have bought into an over romanticized idea of what sex is supposed to be. We have bought into a Hollywood model of sex that really isn't what real sex looks like. And, and there are many missing elements in that story that we don't see on a regular basis. And so it still has gone into our head so many times that we think it's real and we think we should be emulating it. And those false sexual bars also might be things that past partners taught you, or some standard that you still have from your religion or your family upbringing or cultural upbringing, or, just some mythical version of sex, that you see in the movies. And so I think we have to stop comparing ourselves to others. We have to really, and expect that that's going to empower us, because it won't. And then I think we really have to look underneath those expectations and where they're coming from and why we have them. This is something I work with all of the women who come into my programs on, because it's really absolutely essential that we look at what's underneath these things and we look at these false bars of comparison that really prevent us from being truly, authentically who we are. And if we're trying to be somebody that we're not sexually, that's certainly going to get in the way. So yes. And then the 5th thing is this idea that it should come easy, right? So there are all these ways that we shortchange sex. We think it should be natural. We think that we should just have spontaneous desire that just erupts. And then we're like, yeah, baby, let's go. Which it could be sometimes, but it's often not. We think that, that sexual desire and arousal should just show up without us doing anything. We think that sex is instinctual and it should just happen, and that we put it on autopilot, and that those instincts are just going to take over and everything is going to magically happen. None of that is true. None of that is true. Sex requires effort, just like anything else in your life that you want to be good at. It requires some effort. It requires some time. It requires some learning. It might require a little investment on your part. It requires some focus, Anybody watching the World Cup right now? Do you think that those soccer players just magically knew how to play soccer, right? Do you think that top culinary, brilliant chefs just automatically know how to make amazing food? No. Nothing in the world is like this. And yet we treat sex this way. We treat sex, it's the only thing that we're like, we should just know how to do it. You shouldn't need any help. You shouldn't have to, obviously I'm preaching to the choir because you all are here. You're here willing to learn and wanting to learn. But in general, right, we've got that Hollywood idea of spontaneous desire. It just happens, and then suddenly, it's like they see each other from across the room and then suddenly they're in bed, and then mutual orgasm and then cigarette, cut to cigarette. I mean, there's this way in which we think desire should just erupt and we should be enraptured. We have to make sex a priority. We have to stop treating it like, this thing that just should happen, and then we get mad at it when it doesn't, right? Our sexual energy propels us in life. And also, the more energy you put into your sexuality and into your pleasure and into your relationships, the more energy you build, right? Energy begets energy. Energy reproduces more energy. And so if and that goes for everything in life. That's physics. I'm talking about physics here. It goes for sex too, right? And so the more that we put into that, then the more experiences you're going to have. Whew, yeah. So it's a lot of things. I would love to hear any more comments about, like, what is it that really holds you back? And I'm going to answer some questions. I think this is post-traumatic sex syndrome. Yeah, I like that, Paul. Yeah, I mean, really, we've done a number on ourselves around sex. We really have. And so it's, unfortunately, we've inherited this. We've inherited these ideas about sex. And now we have to spend some time unlearning them and reprogramming ourselves and reorienting ourselves to be more of that open, juicy sexual being that's open to pleasure and joy, and that gets to be at home in your body and gets to really experience what you're here to experience. That's why we're here. I think it's a huge piece of why we're here. I think we're here to grow, right? And I think we're here to have some pleasure and enjoyment along the way, because we experience pain and we experience trauma, and that's part of being human. And you can't have pain and the trauma without also having the antidote, which is the pleasure and the joy, right? And the love. So we need all of that. And we have work to do. Yes. Post-traumatic sex syndrome. I like it. Amanda says, my partner of over 20 years and I have found ourselves in autopilot. This is not uncommon, Amanda. After 2 kids, we always come last. We definitely need to focus our energies back into our sex life, but it's hard to get our heads out of the logistics of the day-to-day activities and redefine our sexual relationship. Yeah. Yeah. I work with couples on this a lot. I often work with couples in my work and teach classes for them and try to help people with those dynamics. I don't have kids, but I certainly watch a lot of people managing a lot with the kids. It's like, it's not just your schedule, you're managing 3 schedules or 4 schedules or whatever. And so, we're overscheduled, we're busy, we are, under-resourced usually. And we have to get into a more abundant frame around time and around how we're approaching sex and sexuality, because if we're coming to that from a place of scarcity, then that's not really, if we're just like, oh my God, we just don't have time for our sex life, then there certainly isn't any abundance left for sex itself, So I think it's critically important that parents really maintain the sanctity of their couplehood with each other and of their erotic space together, whether you're having sex or whether you're creating that erotic space in a different way, that you make time to be in erotic space and wellness with each other on a weekly basis, at least on a weekly basis. And so one of my friends, Sam Bennett, likes to call this happy naked adult time. And I call it sexy naked adult time, right? We need sexy naked adult time. We need time where we're just like, we're going to lock the door, the kids are in bed. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sneezing. The kids are in bed or they're doing their thing or whatever, and you get to be naked together. And whether you have sex or whether you do other erotic things, whether you have a bath together, whether you massage each other, whether you eye gaze, whether you whatever, give each other a foot massage, maybe sometimes you have a Netflix night, but you can't do that all the time, that you make sexy naked adult time and that you prioritize that, because it will not happen by itself. Your kids aren't going to prioritize it, not their job to do it, right? That would be wildly inappropriate. It is, it's looking at the nature of your life and what is in it and saying this piece we need to carve out space for this piece. It's not going to, sneezing helped me learn to orgasm. That's awesome. This is Nora. You're not just going to, it's not magically going to make time for itself, you have to bring it to the front burner. This is why I teach my clients to create sexual practices in the way in which you would create a spiritual practice. When you do that, you are creating priority. You're making it a priority. So it's really important that you do that with yourself and or, with your partner. So I want to bring in some of the questions that people have been sending in. Give me a second to pull those up. Here we go. So had some really good questions. Thank you to everyone that sent in questions. I've been answering them, different questions on each of these webinars this week. So these are all anonymous. I'm not going to give names. So this person says, my husband only gets an erection and gets aroused with medicines. He was the first guy I ever had sex with. He doesn't get excited looking at me, even when I'm naked or wear something appealing. However, he's ready to do anything to make me happy. He wants to live with me all his life, and I think he loves me. He did, in a way, lie to me by not telling me about this problem before we got married a couple years back. However, he loves me and he's doing everything he can to make me feel happy, and he takes the medicine twice a week. Is it okay to live a life wherein the husband is dependent on medicines to get turned on? He is kind, good at heart, hardworking, and loves me. Also wanted to mention, I've never had sex with anyone else, so will I be missing something in life if it goes like this? Also, I have a good figure and will consider myself good looking, better than average. Be good to yourself. Yes. Appreciate your own beauty. Okay. So there's several things going on here. One is that, just to say it's fine for your husband to need the medicines. That's fine. However, I think what we are doing is we're living in this culture where we're very medication happy. And we want to be able to take a pill for everything. I think, Viagra or things like, relate like that can be helpful at times. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if we're relying on it all the time, what we're doing is we're creating a neural pathway that says this is the only way that I can get aroused. And so, if I were working with you and your husband, I would want to work with your husband on what's underneath that. And my guess is that there's some other emotional, psychological aspects going on here, some things that maybe make it hard for him, or there may be some things about his body that he doesn't know. Sometimes there's physical things, sometimes there's emotional things. My assumption is that he has, had himself checked out to make sure that there's not something, like terribly wrong going on that would be impeding this. But when you learn to do practices, that's why so many people love Tantra. I teach Tantra. I don't really call it Tantra, but it is part of what I teach. When you learn these practices, when you learn many of the things I'm talking about, how to be more present, how your body works, how to work with sexual tools in your body, you'd be amazed at the things you can experience. As for, it's great that he wants to make you happy. It sounds like he's a willing partner. He's willing to show up. And I really hear that you're a little sad that he's not like really hot for you, and, and you're wanting to feel that more. And so, I think that is hard. And, will you be missing something on life if it goes like this? Maybe. That's really up to you to decide how important it is to you and whether anything can change. If your partner is willing to work on this and to make some shifts, things could shift, things could change. And if he's not, then you have other questions to ask. And I think that's where it gets really hard, and that's an individual decision. There are, I do think that sex gets to be a deal breaker. I think it can be that important. And sometimes we need more than what we're getting. And it's really a source of deep unhappiness. So that gets to happen. That does get to happen. So thank you for that question. I hope that you're listening. I think that, the Claim Your Orgasm program would be really helpful for both of you, because it would teach you a lot of skills and ways to then also communicate in a different way that would be really meaningful. But I'm happy to follow up with you. Okay, someone else says, I've been on an intentional focus of personal healing, specifically related to childhood sexual trauma that has since distorted and numbed my adult sexual life. It's been years, yes, years, since my wife and I have orgasmed, pardon my spelling if it's wrong, together. Years, in fact, since we've even had sex. I allowed myself to go numb, and it's been such a spirit sucker. We are still together and love each other immensely, but we miss each other sexually. I know I miss her, but I feel like a loser and so lost. Please share your tips or suggestions. How do I rekindle the flame after so long being sexually disconnected? We both still orgasm in solitary masturbation, but I miss the partner orgasms. I miss sex. Yeah, you've got to change this up, because again, this is what happens, right? Okay, so if people understand about neural pathways, right? When we respond a particular way over and over, whether it's an emotional thing, a sexual thing, a physical reaction, whatever, we create neural pathways in our brains, and then it becomes harder to react in a different way. And so sexually, what that means is it becomes harder to orgasm in a different way. It becomes harder to get turned on in a different way. That's why this is the same for the Viagra question. You've got to change it up. You've got to create some kind of structure or some kind of, program for yourselves where you're going to do this differently. You're going to practice different things so that you don't get stuck in the rut. That's really what it becomes. It almost becomes like this rut in your brain. It's like when rainwater flows down a dry hill, the water is going to find a groove, right? And it'll find that groove and it'll go down that groove. And then the next time it rains, the water goes down that same groove and the groove gets bigger. And over time, that groove will become a fissure, like a big fissure, right? That's how this works in your brain. It becomes this bigger fissure in your brain. And so then it's harder to do the other thing. But what happens is that when you do the other thing, you start to create a new fissure, right? A new neural pathway. And, just like with the rainwater, if you started to direct it to another area, right, it would create a new pathway. And then the old one gets weaker. The old one starts to soften. It doesn't become so ingrained. This is how we change. This is how we create change in many parts of our lives. So for all of you who are having sex the same way, same position, same toys, same room, same time of day, same order of operations, you've got to change it up. You can't keep doing the same things over and over again and expect that you're going to have different results or that something exciting is going to happen. I mean, you might have a more, like days where it feels better or more exciting things do happen, but you've got to change it up. And so you've got to learn maybe some new skills to help you change that up, and like to do that differently. This is critically, critically important. Answer some more questions. So I see that Maureen has a question. Maureen, can you just write your question, please? I'm not going to bring people on to ask through voice. So if you could just pop your question in, I want to answer your question. Lucy Debbie says, I'm in, just bought it. Thanks. Oh, I'm so glad, Lucy Debbie. I'm really happy to have you. Thank you. Yes, let us know if you bought the program. We want to welcome you. I want to personally welcome you. So I welcome you. Amanda says, sexy naked adult time sounds amazing. You're exactly right, of course. Thank you. Yes, indeed. So yes, I'm going to give you lots of tools and options of things to do during sexy naked adult time. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to help you develop the sexual practice that I talked about earlier. There's actually an intro video. It's not even in the modules. It's like the intro. First thing I want you to do is to look at my video on creating a sexual practice. And I'm going to help you to do that. And that's part of what is going to give you the structure to prioritize your sexuality every day and to create practices that will be sustainable. Because what happens is that people learn these amazing things, but then they don't sustain them. And that's where the practice comes in. And that's where like kind of melding that like approach that we often have to like spiritual things and things that we exalt in that way actually help us tremendously in our sexual lives. And so, yes, so I'm also going to jump right in with you in the program and do that. So welcome, Lucy Debbie. Glad to have you. So there are some more questions. Maureen, pop your question into the chat. I'm going to answer another one or two that I have in front of me. So I was talking about, this woman, that talked about being lost with her partner, like you've got to like interrupt the patterns, right? And so here's another pattern that someone asked about. She says, what's your opinion on premature orgasm for women? There's loads about it in regards to men and premature ejaculation, but not for women as far as I can see. And the few people I've talked to don't resonate. And most of the talk regarding women and orgasm is about how to reach orgasm at all and the blocks with it. I can orgasm easily and quickly, but it's not earth-shattering, multiple, long, drawn out. That is a mystery to me at this point. The problem is once I orgasm, I lose interest in sex. I get super tired and am no longer turned on, which is problematic. Okay, so yes. So this goes back to what we've been talking about, that you've gotten used to having orgasms in a particular way. And so there's like a thing that like in the kink community and also in the gay community that people do that's called edging, right? Edging is when you practice like coming up on the edge of your orgasm, but then you stop enough to not have the orgasm. And then you edge again, you edge up against it again, like you kind of like let things come back down a little bit. And then you come back towards it again, you get to the edge again, and then you pull back, right? And so again, there are real practices that can help you with this. So yes, there, if you're just used to having like the quick 2-minute orgasm, and it's really quick and that's it, and then you get tired, then learning actually how to have an extended orgasm is a major thing that's going to help you. Major part of what's going to help you. And so I'm really glad you asked this because I do get more questions about not having orgasms. So I think, and then she says, I get focused on giving the other person pleasure. It's worked with men and I can kind of hide it and focus on their climax. My own experience has improved somewhat by being with women lately in its change of focus. However, it has made it worse in that I can't hide it anymore. I can't hide in it anymore and convince myself things are what I want it to be. I don't know how to sustain sex when orgasm happens so prematurely and then has the effect it does. Yeah, it's a similar approach to men, working with men in premature ejaculation / orgasm. It's the same idea. You have to learn and train your body to do it differently. This is about training. And a lot of us have not trained our bodies well, and so this is about like, how can I shift my approach to my body in the way in which I'm doing it so that I'm not doing it the same way every time. I'm not having this be what my body gets used to, right? Tammy, I'm in. And then Katie says, would you please tell us again where the program is on your site? Yes, I'm sorry. I don't have anyone helping me today. So let me pop it into the chat so that you can see it. I'll put it at the top here. So it's go to amyjogoddard.com. That is my name. Let me spell it right. .com/claim your orgasm. Okay. Claim your orgasm. amyjogoddard.com, claim your orgasm. And yay, Tammy, I'm super happy to have you. Katie, I would love to have you. Yes, so amyjogoddard.com/claim your orgasm. We will work on breaking these patterns in this class. It's about giving yourself more breadth, more ability to do sex and do desire and do arousal and do orgasm and pleasure in a different way. And the more breadth you have, then the more you're able to experience, and the more you trick your body, right? So I mentioned this the other day. This is similar to how workouts get approached now, right? This is why P90X became such a phenomenon, right? Because it's about not doing the same workout every day. And so you're using different muscle groups, you're working out in a very different way, you're still getting all the benefits of exercise and everything that will give you, but you're tricking your muscles and you're tricking your body to do it in another way so that your body can't expect always what's going to happen. Same thing with sex. Same thing. Same thing with orgasm. And so the more you have in your repertoire, the more you're able to do different things, the more you're going to be able to work with different partners if you have multiple partners, the more you're going to have a creative sexual life with the partner that you might be with. So going back to the couple that has been married for 20 years and doesn't have a lot of time and, like you're bored, right? It's easy to get there. I mean, I've been there. I've totally been there in relationships. I went into therapy because of that in a relationship. So I get it. You've got to keep bringing the creativity to it. You've got to keep shifting it up and keeping it interesting. And so that's why I'm adding some of these new videos. I'm going to add the video on ritual. I'm going to add the video on erotic role play, because those are some of the ways that we can actually really change it up and make each sexual moment a little bit different, or a little like exciting in a different way, or interesting in a different way, and we can show up differently. Okay, Gina says, I had sex issues, low sex drive, religious views, shame by my family, all the things, most of my life. I think I have finally hit my prime, but may start to go through perimenopause, menopause. How will this course help me when I start losing interest or my sex drive? Oh my God. Gina, first of all, is the assumption that you're going to just lose it. Okay. It doesn't have to be that way. I was recently at an event. I was teaching at an event in Mexico. And this woman came up to me and was like, I think she was 48 or 49 years old. And she was like, oh my God, I'm loving the late 40s. I'm loving this period. I'm loving, like I have so much desire. I have so much erotic energy and charge. Like she was off the charts excited about her erotic energy. I have heard many people talk that way, just as many talking that way as talking about like, oh, I've lost it. I don't feel it. I don't know what happened. Now, this is not to say that there are not things that happen hormonally in our bodies. Hormones are real. The things that happen in our bodies are real. Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be that way. So number one is that we're not going to assume it's going to be that way. What you're going to do in this course is you're going to develop all of the tools and the things that can keep it interesting. And in particular, you're going to learn how to improve and increase desire. Because again, our approach in this culture is that we treat it like it's magically supposed to happen. Sometimes it does, right? Sometimes you're just like, oh my God, that person's hot, swing, like sometimes that spontaneous desire happens and the arousal is there and you're ready to go. And like, you could do them right now, right there on the sidewalk, and it would be super hot, right? And that doesn't always happen. And in fact, most of the time it doesn't happen, particularly for women. So this is about getting to know your sexual energy, getting to know your erotic energy and how to increase it and build it. And to learn it before moving into, to learn these skills before moving into perimenopause and menopause is very helpful, very important, right? Because it's harder once you're like in that to then shift back. It's not impossible. And anyone who's in perimenopause or menopause would be tremendously helped in this. I've had a question about this every time I've done this webinar this week. I'm in perimenopause, so I'm experiencing it myself right now. I get it. There can be shifts in our feelings, and we get to decide how we want to respond and what we want to give energy to. And so I think that is where the craft and the skill of our sexual life comes in, the craft and the skill of pleasure and orgasm. We can we can use the tools. You can, like, again, you're going to learn these tools. We're going to go deep into how to, people are not breathing when they're having sex. Literally, you're not breathing. We're quiet. We've been taught to keep a lid on it. Like we talked about earlier, we've been taught to be small about it, to minimize it. And then what happens is that we go into sex wanting it to be big and expansive, and it's not, because it's antithetical. It can't be, right? And so it's about really learning how to make those things big, how to tap deeply into your voice, into the capabilities of your body, of your breath, of your parts, and to develop the skills that you need in your relationship so that you can be met in relationship and you can feel the connection that you need. A lot of people don't have the pleasure and the orgasm because they don't feel connected. They don't feel juicy with their partner, right? Like the woman that wrote in about like her partner not really being attracted to her, not showing that outwardly. That's hard. Like we want that connection, and we're able to experience and feel more when we have that connection. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that you've dealt with a variety of different issues around sex, and many people have, Gina. Many people have. I've helped many people around the religious stuff and the all of the shame. I mean, every program I work on, we address shame and how to heal from shame. That is critically important. And then there are those physical things of like, okay, I'm feeling low sex drive. Like, what do I do about that? How do I manage that? Okay, I have one more question I'm going to answer here. Maureen, you never wrote your question, so I'm sorry. I don't know what it is. Okay. I would add, yay, Katie's in. So excited to get started. I'm super excited to have you, Katie, or Katie W, I guess. A says, I would add to Gina's question around menopause, the difficulties around one's body changes, vaginal dryness, pain with intercourse, etc. Yeah. Those things are real, and there's different things that we can do, and people make different choices about it. I'm on several herbs right now that have been really helpful for me, in terms of like not having the night sweats, which has been like a big thing for me. And again, part of the vaginal dryness is, part of keeping it juicy, which again, there are women who do stay more juicy. It's not impossible. It may very well change. And so it's about like working with that, figuring out what works for you with your body now. And that is part of what I really encourage people to not get into the lament of like, God, I just want my 25-year-old body again. Like my 47-year-old body feels differently than my 25-year-old body did, or my 30 or 35-year-old body did, And so it's always about like, let's have a new process of discovery of what's possible for my body as it is now. And so I think some of it is just our approach, that it's like, it's this thing we have to fix, and being upset that something has changed. Everything changes. Our body will change. And so it's like, wow, what is this body capable of now? What does this body like today? What does this body want today with my partner? Maybe it's not intercourse or the thing that we always do, and so it's also giving yourself permission to want different things, to ask for different things, and to not always do the same thing. And that we have bodies that change. This happens for people of all genders. I've talked to a lot of men about this, where they're like, I'm really sad that I'm not having orgasms anymore. I'm really, or not orgasms, erections, right? That I'm not getting erections, and I don't know what to do about it, right? And so it's about, we have to learn some alternate skills, some alternate approaches to sexuality, because that doesn't mean your sex life should just die. And sadly, that's what happens for a lot of people. They just stop doing it because they feel all this shame about it. They feel bad about it. They want it to be different. And so they just let it go because they can't face the shame and the sadness. And I'm telling you, you break through the shame and the sadness, there's so much that's on the other side of that for you. There's so much joy and pleasure and ecstasy that can happen if we let go of the false expectation that sex has to be a certain way, right? Or that sex is supposed to be the way it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. What is it now? Let me get excited about that. I have been shamed by doctors around my menopausal questions, so I'm hoping this program will be embracing the positive. Is your messaging that you are sharing now communicated throughout the program? The program is not about menopause. The program is about orgasm and pleasure. Everything in the program is beneficial to all of us, as I said, regardless of where you are now, everything in the program will benefit you. So what I'm hearing is the desire to have some support around menopause in particular. So that's a new video that I would be happy to add. I'd be happy to do something around that, because I think this is a big piece that a lot of people have questions around. And I might even bring in an expert that I know, who can actually talk about some of the herbal things and some of those like specific biochemical things. I'm really happy to help you with that. Tammy, what herbs help your night sweats? Okay, I'm not an herbalist. I am not prescribing anything to anyone. But there's been several that have helped me. I've been using ashwagandha, and I've been using chaste tree has been super, super duper helpful. And I'm mixing ashwagandha with, I think, basil. There's a few different things. But, yes, I mean, I think it's better to see an herbalist. And I may just have my herbalist come do a little class, and I may make that a part of the program, because I'm really getting, every time I've done this webinar this week, people have asked questions about this. So I really get that this is a thing, and I'm in it with you. I am in it with you. So we'll discover some things together. I'm discovering things that are working for me, and I certainly have listened to the wisdom of my elders as well. So absolutely. But menopause is not like, oh my God, everything's gonna be wither and die. We have to stop seeing menopause that way. We really, really do. We have to see it as a time of a lot of excitement and really a lot of reinvention. There's so many ways that women especially reinvent themselves during perimenopause and menopausal years. I have watched it in my clients over and over and over again. And I think it's actually a really important time. And I think that when we tap into the excitement of that, because it's like in your 20s, you think you know everything, but you kind of don't really. Well, I did. You don't. Then you realize you get knocked down a little bit and you realize you didn't know everything. And then, that humbling helps you to learn more, and you spend your 30s maybe getting a lot of experience that helps you to really up your game and up what you're capable of in your life. And this goes for sexually too. And then I think in your 40s, it's like we get to put all of that wisdom and experience together, and then we get to lift it up and do something even bigger with it. That's why most people, they do their greatest things in their later years. Their biggest accomplishments happen in their later years. And sometimes their best sex happens in their later years. My mentor, Betty Dodson, that someone mentioned earlier, I mean, she's in her late 80s now. She's almost 90 years old, and she's still going. She's loved every decade. She has been my role model for, sexual development and loving myself as I age and through menopause. And, we need more of those role models for sure. And I've gotten to really see a lot of people in my life do that differently. And so I maybe have a different perspective. So I know we're starting to, we've run out of time. People are running out here. Sounds fantastic. Thank you. You are so welcome. I'm happy to hear any closing thoughts. So my last question is related to what we were just talking about. This woman says, I'm 34, single, heterosexual, desire and creative energy seem to be dead. They're not dead. I wrote my book, Woman on Fire, about the fire. It is the fire that is in us. Sometimes the fire is down to an ember, but it's there. The fire is there, right? She says, I have no idea what turns me on or how I like sex, even if I did have it. How do I try and bring back desire to my life? How do I learn what I like? Please come do Claim Your Orgasm. Please do. I have a relatively healthy diet and lifestyle otherwise. Yeah. So I think, again, we need to have more opportunities to figure out the things that we like. I will give you also just a sneak peek that I'm doing. I'll be doing a retreat in the fall. And keep an eye out for that. My Fire Women retreats. For those of you that really want to get to experience erotic skills, we do some pretty advanced work on that. So, spending the next couple months doing Claim Your Orgasm and then showing up at my retreat in the fall, you would be so golden. It will be amazing, the things that you will learn. So there's things I can do by video, and there's things I can do with you in person. I do offer all of that. So Tammy says, was just curious what worked for you. Thank you. I definitely would consult an herbalist. Yeah, please do. Please do. No, and I'm happy to share. I just, it's like the disclaimer I have to make. So you all have been wonderful. Thank you so much for your questions. I really look forward to seeing those of you who are signing up for Claim Your Orgasm. I'm really, really delighted to have you. And Nora says, for someone who has been to the Firewoman retreat, it is amazing. I learned so much last fall. My life has changed. I love it. Thank you, Nora. Yeah, I loved having you there. So yes, I would love to support you and work with you. And, this is a really, my coaching programs are thousands and thousands of dollars. So this is truly like the lowest offering I have, where I'm teaching you this amount of skills. And I purposely did this to give you this opportunity as the people that have shown up and want to learn and are ready to do this. I haven't set the date for the online coaching session yet. I will set it a few weeks out so that people have time to get there and all of that. Yeah. So I want you to have it. And, it is available till Saturday. After that, it's not available until I put it in my online store, and the price will go up. So, or it may be available, but the price will go up. So this is what my offering is for you. And I thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions and your vulnerability. Thank you for receiving this conversation and these teachings today. I feel very blessed for the work that I do, and really, really honored that I get to do it with you. So I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.